This podcast is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells of the Rising Dawn series. Do you like violence? Do you like smut? Are you tired of the stereotypical novels of werewolf romance out there and want something a little bit different? Then pick up Sparked Revolution, Book 1 in the Rising Dawn series by Rebecca Cassells. Available on Amazon, in Kindle, and paperback. You too can become a sponsor of Stories, the True and the Fictional by heading on over to buymeacoffee.com/STTATF or follow the link in the show notes. Hello guys and welcome to another episode of Stories, the True and the Fictional. We have a wonderful guest, but before we bring him in, Ryan, are you still living the dream?
I am still living the dream, actually. It's nice and early this morning. I made sure I got up at a reasonable time at 8:30, and I am raring to go and living the dream.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, guys, check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells, Martin Kearns. My book trailer dropped last week, so check that out. And now, it's time for the show. Tim McKay, how are we going?
Pretty good, thanks. How about you guys?
Well, Ryan's living the dream.
Yeah,
Living the
apparently.
Well, for those who may not know, who is Tim McKay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a fantasy author based here in Ottawa, Canada. Been writing for about 3 or 4 years now, mostly academia and government work and marketing work before that. So still relatively fresh to the scene. I initially published 2 shorter fantasy books, kind of ended up taking those down, combining them, adding a third part, and then republishing and expanding. Before I did that, so right now it's really just my first book that's live, The Fall of Selvandrea, and that's been live since roughly September, and I ended up getting an illustrated cover for it. So I republished even that.
Wow.
So really, it feels like I've only just been on the go. Yeah, I've on social media, I've had a presence for about a year and a half, 2 years now. But
Yep.
in terms of actually having a book out there, it feels like I'm still, roughly 2 to 3 months in. So it still feels very new to me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to dive straight into that at some point, but we do have a tradition here on the podcast that all guests must answer the icebreaker questions. We
Hmm.
get a lot of great answers. So, Ryan, why don't you take it away?
No worries. Okay, so if you could get rid of one thing in this world, what would it be? And just for argument's sake, let's say, the world peace is achieved, no one goes hungry, everyone's nice to animals, and we want selfish answers.
I mean, thinking long and hard about this one, it's going to be book related, because this is one that just really, really, really does get to me. For me, it would be vanity presses, and by extension, anything predatory, any predatory agents in the
Mm.
publishing industry. Oh my gosh, yeah! If I could get rid of those in one
Yeah.
fell swoop, what a dream! There's so many of them. Anyways, don't get me started.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that. I particularly want to get rid of the scammers as well. You know, like the
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, I mean it's wild.
yeah,
It's their entire bot farms dedicated
yeah,
to these, and I mean they
yeah,
must work. For there
yeah,
to be so many, they must be getting a good amount of money in.
yeah,
I mean, it's just, and to me that's tragic. How many new authors who get on the scene and have no idea what they're getting into fall for these things,
yeah,
and it starts small, just a little bit of money here and there. That adds up very quick, you know. Ah, it breaks my heart. It
yeah.
makes me
So,
so
so,
angry.
some with the bots, I can figure out pretty quickly that they're
Yeah.
bots. I like to ask them a real big philosophical question, and it's forced to do a redundant algorithm. I'll be like, "You're a bot,"
Yep.
you know?
Oh yeah, there's nothing more satisfying than trolling the bots in return,
Yeah,
just giving them some stupid
yeah.
response and seeing what
Well,
happens. Yep.
there's this hilarious British comedian called James Veitch who went viral for responding to scammers on through emails, and his
Mm,
goal is to make them say stop emailing us.
that's
And
awesome.
he's
Yep.
done it so many times. He's like, there was a very very funny one where he's like, please, I think we're being monitored, and I'm worried, so we're gonna have to talk in code from now on. So West Credit Union Bank or whatever the Union Bank, whatever it is giant gummy lizard. And then he said all these confectionery things, and he kept pushing it, saying, you got to use the code. You got to use the code." And he got this massive email, and it was like, "Please send 40,000 gummy bears to the giant gummy lizard." And
So good.
yes,
Yeah, same thing with telemarketers. Whenever I
yeah,
see someone do a reverse, scam on the telemarketer,
yeah,
it's just, oh yeah,
yep,
so good. Yeah,
yep.
absolutely.
Awesome. All right, well, tell us something that's on your bucket list.
Hmm. What was I thinking for that? Okay, this may be a lamer answer, but again, on the book theme, I get serious envy whenever I see other authors talking about going to those major conferences,
Mm,
like WorldCon or DragonCon or all these
yeah,
different, just international events. I'm not much of, I mean, I've traveled, a half decent amount, but I'd rather do it with purpose like that.
yeah.
Maybe a close second would be skydiving. I definitely want to go skydiving at some point. And then, yeah, if I was going to travel, traveling, I wouldn't want to do it for a really vacation. I would want to go see people,
Yeah,
something like a conference, or maybe the exception would be to go swimming in some exotic, uh, not just an ocean. I'm talking. I
yeah.
like lakes.
All right,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah, that'd be it for me. So one of those three things: swimming somewhere exotic, book conferences, or skydiving.
Well, maybe they could put them all together for you, like a book conference near a
That would be a good
lake,
trip. That would
and
be a
then
great
your
trip.
entrance would be you skydiving in.
Perfect. You know what? That would probably be really good for sales.
Yeah,
Skydive in, sell some
yeah.
books. Yeah.
Like books for you. Oh, oh, yeah. Do you do hardcovers or paperbacks?
I do both. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, those hardcovers would be a
Yeah,
little bit dangerous.
yeah. Awesome.
Okay, the next question is this is the judgment question. As I like to say, depending on your answer, the interview may or may not be over quite quickly. So what is the world's best sitcom? And if that is not your favorite, what is your favorite sitcom of all time?
Yeah, so I have a feeling I'm gonna get this axe right here. I'm only remotely hopeful because of the conversation we had before coming on, where you mentioned what is my favorite. So I realize it's probably not considered the best by most people, but I love How I Met Your Mother. So I'm gonna put that as my favorite. I know most people don't consider it the best. Tough.
No, I
Yeah,
love it.
I think How I Met Your Mother was the perfect sitcom until maybe the last episode. But
Oh yeah?
then, but then the good thing is I borrowed. See, I was one of those people who just streamed, and I was watching it on Netflix, and
Hmm.
Netflix decided to take it off when I was up to season 7. So I called Trusty Jamie, who has everything on DVD, and didn't stream anything at the time. So I said, "Can I borrow you How I Met Your Mother?" And then, luckily, that DVD has the alternate ending, where it's actually a good ending, not a bad ending, because essentially you're going through 10 years of How I Met Your Mother, but it's really just how much he actually loves Robin. And
Yeah.
but yeah, the correct ending, or in my opinion, the correct ending is the alternate ending that's on the DVD, which is the best ending.
Mm.
I didn't know this existed.
I think you can watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Um,
looking that up right after we're done talking.
yeah,
I
but
had no idea.
I'm pretty sure you know what it would be. He doesn't end up with Robin. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
which because like my mate says this all the time. It does not make sense for you to sit on a couch and tell your kids this long, long, long story of how much you loved Robin, and then but I'm with your wife, and they're like, oh yeah, no, go after Robin. You didn't love our mum at all, did you? Like no daughter would behave that way, you know?
Well,
Like
there's a scene I saw on Facebook videos or something. It must be like a blooper thing where the kids are actually swearing at him, going, "Are you kidding? We sat here for 10 years and you just telling us that you're in love with fucking Robin and all this kind of stuff." And it's quite funny. It's quite fun. I hadn't seen that before, and I only
yeah,
saw it like a couple of weeks ago. But yeah,
That's so
if you
good.
can just Google alternate ending. I mean, just put into YouTube alternate ending to How I Met Your Mother, and you'll be
yeah,
much more
Yeah.
satisfied. But
Yeah.
aside from that, the rest of the series was amazing,
yeah,
like
Yeah.
heartfelt. I remember bawling my eyes out when Marshall's dad died, and
Yeah.
Mm,
it was right. It got you right in the feels most of the season. It was just I
yeah.
just was disappointed in how it
Yeah.
ended.
Yeah. See, I mean, to me, that's totally fair. And that's the
Yeah.
thing. I was very satisfied throughout, and I can very much understand yeah, oh man, you've really hit home now. I have to go watch this.
Pausing the
Yeah.
podcast. Pausing the podcast.
Yeah, I'll see you guys in a bit. How long is it? 5 minutes. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, I
So
agree. Look,
good.
it's just so quotable, I like to think of it as Friends 2.0, because it had
Yeah.
that vibe, and just
Yeah, exactly.
I
Neil.
think I think I've never heard it referred to as Friends Point 2.0, but I totally agree. It's like Friends
Yeah,
finished. And then, a few years later, How I Met Your Mother started. So it's a more modernized version of Friends.
yeah.
But for our era, like me and Jamie are similar ages, then for our era, I feel like that's our Friends.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I was still very, very young when Friends started. Like I was still I think just in high school when it started. So, yeah, I definitely agree with How I Met Your Mother being Friends 2.0. I'm going to
yeah,
refer to that as from now on.
Yeah, I
So,
really like that. I
yeah,
mean, I'm
no, the
coming up
interview shall
on
continue because you agree with, we both agree with you.
yeah,
I think the
yes.
only other thing that you could have said was, if you said Scrubs, we would have
Okay.
kept the interview going because that's Jamie's favorite, and he introduced that to me.
yeah,
But I think
No,
that's a
see,
very
that's a good answer
acceptable
too.
answer.
I don't put it as high up there for me as How I Met Your Mother, but it is. I
yeah,
can very much respect that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when Jamie put me onto Scrubs, he essentially put me onto Bill Lawrence, and
Mm.
I pretty much watch everything religiously that Bill Lawrence has done since Scrubs. As Jamie said, he started off as a writer on Friends, I believe, didn't
yeah.
he? And then obviously went to do Scrubs. He's done my favorite show of all time, Ted Lasso, which is coming back
Okay.
for a
Yeah.
fourth season. I don't know how they're going to do that, but yeah. And then he's also done another one of my favorite shows called Shrinking, which is still going with Harrison Ford and Jason Segel. Yeah, I'm I'm on board for anything Bill Lawrence puts out. I will be watching.
Yeah. And even the
Very
ones
nice.
that didn't do successfully were fantastic. He did like an 8 episode sitcom called Surviving Jack. It had, is it
Yeah,
Maloney, Jack Maloney. He's from Law and Order or whatever it
Christopher.
was. Christopher Maloney. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it was set
Okay.
set set in the 90s, and he was basically a bully to his own kid. It was just
Okay,
like,
that
so
sounds fun.
it was all about his kid surviving his dad essentially, and
That sounds familiar, but I don't think I've seen it. Yeah.
brilliantly written. There was another one that it was a sitcom, like a traditional sitcom, called Undateable.
Hmm.
Amazing cast, um, and a lot of it was done just live, like literally live, and so you
Oh
could
wow.
see improvisation happening, and every episode to start with a musical guest. It was just fantastic, but that only went for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah,
that's
no,
that's not a bad run. I think we get spoiled with things like
yeah,
Friends and How I Met Your Mother. I
yeah,
mean, 3 runs, not bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
yeah. We don't. When you think about it nowadays, we don't really have any shows that go for the length of like Friends did 10 seasons, How I Met Your Mother did 10 seasons, Scrubs did
Eight.
eight,
yeah,
Yeah.
8 seasons,
not nine.
and yeah, but nowadays you really don't get shows that go for that long. I'm just trying to think of a show that I'm watching that's been going for that long, and I honestly can't.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, unless you migrate over to the fantasy or the superhero
yeah.
series,
Naruto,
Oh yeah,
There you go. Yeah.
One Piece.
anime doesn't count. Anime doesn't count.
Anime
When
doesn't
you've
count.
got when you've got like 960 episodes in season one, it doesn't count.
It's
You
true.
know, like most of the animes nowadays have only got like I think, and I say only have only got like 50 episodes a season. But
Yeah.
back in the when Naruto first came out, man, that's why I haven't jumped on the Naruto bandwagon because it's just too much of a commitment.
Mm.
Yeah,
Um, even One Piece, the anime is just, I think the first season's 270 episodes, so
Oh my gosh.
it's a
Yeah,
big commitment.
I don't have that kind of time anymore.
I don't have that. I don't work at the moment and I don't have that time. So yeah.
that's it. That's it. All right, why don't you
Yeah.
tell us about your zombie apocalypse plan?
Hmm.
They'd move
That
pretty
was
slow up there in Canada, wouldn't they? Anyway, even more slower, you
the cold. Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. Maybe I could rely on the cold to, for that extra protection. The wolves and the bears and all that can handle the rest. Yeah, I didn't think about that because I was initially very pessimistic. I thought, yeah, I don't even think I'm gonna make it, so I might as well just starve myself in protest. I'm so sick of zombie stuff. Right now,
No
there's
zombies,
just,
no more zombies.
oh, stop it. But no, you know what? You're right.
Yeah,
Canadian advantage. I might as well
yeah.
I'd probably have to move a little further north. It's still, I mean, well, I consider where I am warmer, but then everyone I talk to in the US would not last where I live right now.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
all
true.
relative, right?
Yeah. I like that. I'd like to think that signs, protests would be the thing that would stop zombies. Like it's the irony. It's like this horde comes towards you and you just see these people go, no more zombies, and they go, no, and they just turn around and walk away. It's just
Or they'll do one of those, like in World War Z, where they just move around. They're like, okay, no, we don't want that one. Go for the healthy people.
yeah,
I think if there was a zombie apocalypse, there would still be a group of people who would try and befriend the zombies and
yeah,
and do that because even going back to movies like Independence Day, all those
Yeah.
people on the roof saying
Yes.
welcome to our
Yes.
planet, and they just get blown to smithereens. There
Yep.
would still be people trying to convert the zombies and trying to, you know, oh, we love you, zombies, we love you.
Such
Yeah.
a good scene. And I feel like you wouldn't get that in movies anymore. Now
mm,
they'd somehow make those people the heroes of the movies today,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the glory days.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
All right, the last question is so Bill and Ted have I'm actually going not off the questions list because normally I just read it directly off there. So Bill and Ted rock up outside your house in their time traveling phone booth and say, "Whoa, we're here to Rufus has told us that we're going to take you wherever you want to go, forwards or backwards. What do you do and where do you go?"
Well, you know, okay, forward changes the answer a little bit because I feel like I would just love to go 100 years and,
Yeah.
forward, see what it's like just for kicks. But pending that, because really, I'm actually somewhat optimistic. I feel like it would be pretty good. Pending that, uh, two possibilities. Okay, so I'd either want to go something like the mid 1700s.
Ooh.
That would be for my history kick.
Yeah.
A lot going on there, a lot of technological and cultural change, a lot of huge historical, globally changing movements, big revolutions, although I probably want to skip the French one. Uh, you know, but
Yeah.
otherwise, like that's a very pivotal period. So that'd
Yeah.
be really interesting or the 90s, 1990s. Maybe cap it out at like 2005, something like that.
Yeah.
But nice 15-year stretch there of, oh, the world kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. I kind of miss the 90s. Those
Yeah.
were good times.
No, I like both of because like the Industrial level revolution was like 1760, was it 60-ish? Something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely kind of
No.
sort of to some point,
Yeah.
sparked in that period for sure.
Yeah. And of course the 90s, like I mean I already grew up in the 90s, so I
Yeah,
wouldn't mind. I mean I was a bullied kid, but I still loved it.
yeah.
Not being bullied,
Ditto.
but just the 90s, the content, the classic movies before
Yeah,
CGI became incredibly overdone.
yeah,
Ironically, Jurassic Park still holds up all these years later, but
absolutely.
like I just you just that's the one thing Steven Spielberg was good at, just making a movie last.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You look back at a lot of the really great movies from that decade, and they still very much hold up,
Yeah,
and again, I would even say in that case, you have some really good ones that came out kind of in the later 2000s, like closer to 2009,
yeah,
2010. But I mean, the late 90s in particular, and 2000 and 2001, I think at one point I did a tally of all the movies just from those 2 years that are just golden classics.
yeah.
I think like A Beautiful Mind, Master and Commander, Gladiator, I want to say
Mm-hmm.
is in there too. I have this long list of movies just from a very
Yeah,
small span of time, and it
yeah.
feels like we don't get that anymore. Maybe
No.
it's just nostalgia speaking, but I mean,
Mm.
wow,
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
the writing's definitely changed. I mean, every now and again
Yeah,
you'll get a gem, and then you'll look at who wrote. Like, I mean, the new Ghostbusters they did, not the all female one, but like the
The
Afterlife
Frozen
and all that.
Empire.
Yeah, all that, and you find out,
I haven't
okay,
seen that one.
they're written by the son of the guy who died, the guy with the glasses.
Yeah, Jason Reitman is the Ivan Reitman was his dad,
Yeah,
and
Um,
Jason Reitman is the one who wrote the two new one,
yeah,
Afterlife and Frozen Empire.
and they feel
okay.
like classic '90s movies.
I need to
They
give them a chance then. Yeah, I
you
think.
do, and look, I've always loved Paul Rudd. I know he's Paul Rudd is Paul Rudd in everything he does, but
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
him. I really like him.
I loved him in Ant-Man. I thought, wow, this is amazing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
those they are worth a watch. I don't know if there's another one coming, but probably because they're doing well. But
Okay, that's really good to know.
even the
Yeah,
first one, it just did justice to the originals. Like it was a
yeah,
continuation. It was the kids of the one of the original guys finding the Ghostbusters machine. The car and that.
yeah.
And it's just like classic. It just felt like a classic movie.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah. Wow, you're giving me a lot to watch after this.
it didn't acknowledge the all women's Ghostbusters movie at all, which was fantastic.
Yes.
So that I was on board from that.
I just and they made that clear in the first trailer because it was like there hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years.
That's funny.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I saw the trailers for that one. I just thought, ooh, come on, just
yeah.
no. Same thing with Oceans. I
Ocean's
think
8.
yeah, I
Yeah,
just never gave it a chance. I'm sorry. I
yeah,
watched one trailer and I think the first 5 minutes and I just said, no. And it's not about them being women. It's just,
yeah. But it's got to be written well,
yeah,
you know?
that's my only requirement. I don't, it had, anyways, it was just, you could see it
Like,
was forced and it doesn't fit like, why,
yeah, like
you know?
us guys aren't against strong female characters. We love aliens, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I
absolutely.
controversial opinion, but I loved the 2018 Tomb Raider with
Yep.
Yeah,
Alicia Vikander or whatever her name is. She was
yeah,
fantastic. They were robbed of a
I thought
sequel.
so. Did you play the games?
Yes, I didn't play the. I think I played the first one that came out of the newer ones.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So even though they changed a lot in the movie, I thought it was for someone who had played the game first and was blown away. It hit you in the face with the
yeah,
darkness and the grittiness. And then I thought Alicia Vikander did a really good job living up to
yeah.
it.
She's a
Yeah.
brilliant actress.
Yeah.
I even
Yeah.
liked her in Man from Uncle. Uh,
Yes. I really liked Man from Uncle.
that was a great film.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill tragic here. Love all he does. Um, First introduced to him in The Count of Monte Cristo back in
Yes.
early 2000s again.
Yep.
So,
One of my all-time favorite movies
how
and books. So yeah.
how good was that movie? That just it was just mwah.
When I
Just
realized later that Albert Mondego is Henry Cavill, I was
yeah,
blown away. I mean, that's
yeah,
just, oh
yeah,
yes. The
yeah,
first time I saw him as Superman and recognized him right away
yeah,
because I was so obsessed with Count of Monte Cristo.
yeah,
Um, oh, just incredible movie.
yeah.
Absolutely incredible movie.
And then a little off topic. Have you seen the latest Musketeers, the French one? And it's
I
all in
want,
French.
yeah, I think it's available on Prime. Am I right?
Something like that.
Um,
I bought it was so good I bought it on the Blu-rays.
okay, that's good to hear because
But
I saw it and I was tentative. I wasn't
yeah,
sure whether to give
but
it a
but
chance. Okay.
it's revolutionary, excuse the pun, because the
That's
French speak French and the English speak English. You
hey.
know, not like
Yeah.
not like the look. I love the British series that they did a while ago, um, but they're all British. They're
Yeah.
going like,
Yeah.
"Hello, we're French," but they got a British accent. You
Yeah.
know, it's like
Yeah.
saying
Yeah, that
British.
was
Yeah,
what was if the series is the one I'm thinking of. Because I feel like there's been more than one, but
yeah.
the
Well,
one it did a little bit better and I always remember I think it was the Aramis actor. I'll always remember him because he's been in a lot I've seen. He
yeah.
was in Heroes. Does that sound
Yes,
right? Yes,
exactly.
so
Yes,
yes. Yeah, so
that
him I
series.
know. Yeah.
I love that series. There was it did a little bit of doing what I hate and bringing modern tropes into
Yeah.
historical pieces.
Yep.
But given the time, like I kind of put that is again good writing. It was just brilliant
Yeah.
writing, um, and brilliant
Yeah, I'm with you.
cast.
I had kind of the exact same mixed but overall positive
Yeah,
reaction to it.
but
So yeah.
but definitely check out the new movies. I think there's a third one coming. There's like three in the
Oh, good to
series,
know.
and it's just like it's in French. It's got the French subtitles, but then they
Well, I grew
suddenly
up speaking some French anyways. That'd actually be a fun little challenge for me to
yeah,
see how much
awesome.
I can follow. Yeah.
And
I
then
love
but then
it.
they go to England and they switch, and the English are like, "Hello, how are you?" You know.
That's awesome.
And
I
it's
mean,
just like
that fits. Yeah.
makes sense. Check it out anyway. That was a good tangent.
Very
That was a
cool.
good tangent.
That was a
Um,
great tangent. Yeah.
so Ryan, has he passed the icebreakers?
Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Check it out.
I will take it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about you. This podcast is brought to you by Martin Kearns and the Valor of Valhalla series. In the battle between two ancient evils, can one naive young man become the last hope against powerful creatures of legend? Beneath the Veil is the gripping first book in the Valor of Valhalla dark urban fantasy series. If you like reluctant heroes, infernal myths, and bloody epic clashes, then you'll love Martin Kearns' formidable foray into the unknown. So head on over to readkearns.com and grab yourself a copy of Beneath the Veil today. When did your writing journey begin? Take us. What is the origins of Tim McKay?
That's tough. I mean, if we want to go to the actual story that I'm writing now, I could easily trace that back to 10 years old, daydreaming, and starting to pull together some of the pieces from books I was reading at the time. I was obsessed with Deltora Quest was the name of the series by Emily Rodda, who I believe is Australian.
There you go.
I always forget that's her pen name, and I always forget her actual name. But anyways, just this fantastic series, novella length, 20,000 to 30, maybe 40,000 each. And I would read one of those a night as a kid, from roughly 10 to 13. And then I moved on to things like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings I read when I was 12. And my mom had read The Hobbit to me when I was much younger, I think 7, Chronicles of Narnia around the same time. So, I had a lot of exposure to all of that, and a healthy love of fantasy and then historical fiction. By the time I was a teenager, I was diving into things like Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Maturin series, or The Master and Commander, if you've seen the movie. So I've read those. Now, funny enough, well, not to my shame. I don't mind having been exposed to the movie first, but I first saw the Liam Neeson Les Mis.
All right, yeah.
And I love that. So I saw that, and around the same time, Count of Monte Cristo. So those are still two of my all-time favorite movies. And because of that, I had to read the book. So I read the full unabridged Les Mis, 1,100 pages. Oh, yeah, it's a monster. He goes on tangents, things you could not get away with in writing today. Like when Victor Hugo goes on something like 100-page rant against convents, and just it's him in the book just saying how much he does not like convents and how toxic he feels they were, and it's just fun. This is just him going on a rant in the middle of a story, and it's just beautiful. You don't get that anymore.
I think that's why we have
So I read
editors.
that. Sorry?
That's why we have editors now.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I read that. I read Les Mis. I read Les Mis. I read Count of Monte Cristo. Again, branching off with more of that historical fiction sense, and then my favorite series of all time, the Pendragon Cycle by
All right,
Stephen R. Lawhead. Yeah. So it was just I dove in for years, and then for whatever reason, kind of branched off. I think when I went to Bible college when I was around 8, so straight out of high school, 18. I still kept up some fiction reading. I reread Lord of the Rings at some point in those years, but I just, became far more focused on the vocation, and ended up going to Montreal and pastoring there for a bit. So that took over. Eventually, I realized that wasn't for me. That's the very condensed version of that story, but in a nutshell, that is it. I kind of just hit the point where I knew it didn't fit me, and I don't know how else to put it. It wasn't a faith crisis. It was more just a recognition that maybe I had followed hype in some of the environments I was in when I was younger, more than any actual calling.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be in a place I didn't want to be in a position I didn't belong in, not leading anyone astray. I thought I was having a very positive impact, and I was loved where I was, but I just knew it wasn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
And people were very good about that. It was still a very tough transition because then I came back to Ottawa and went back to school. So that's where the writing journey really took off because I realized very quickly they do not teach writing in universities. Oh my gosh.
No.
What is it? You know, they teach you one, they give you one English course when you start off in a humanities program, and it's basically just here's how to write a 5 paragraph essay, the exact same thing we taught you in high school.
Yeah.
And that's the peak of your, so everyone learns how to write these pedantic, flowery, uh regurgitated, essays, and you just do that for 4 years, and that's how you get through your bachelor's. And then you go to your master's and you do more, just longer, essays of the same style, just regurgitating what other people have said from books and textbooks and essays that they've written. And I just got to the end of that, and I was so frustrated because I was also taking on editing roles for student journals, and realizing other than correcting grammar and spelling and basic logic, I had none of the actual skills to help people improve their writing.
Mm.
And so I started doing some online research. How can I improve as an editor? I accepted an editor-in-chief position at the master's journal. I had to teach PhD students how to edit, you know, who had joined the team, and I had nothing. So I just dove into all these online courses and resources. And that's kind of when I got exposed to, one, business writing. So on the nonfiction side, marketing and copywriting and writing for business purposes. And at the same time, started diving into fiction editing and realized, oh, I think in my mind, I always saw authors as, these ethereal artists.
Yeah.
You either have it or you don't. It's this artistic flair, creative flair. And like I said, I grew up loving this content. I just never in a million years would have thought of doing it because it felt far away, but then here I was studying writing and realized this is a skill. This is something that it's a mix of creativity and there are mechanics to it. And you can learn the mechanics and build from there. So kind of by the time I was done my master's, that's when I started dabbling. And I thought, let's just see what happens. I've learned these skills. I think I know, kind of have some firm grasp of the basics. Let's just see if something happens with it. And yeah, so then that takes us to, yeah, roughly, 4 or 5 years ago. And I really started penning the story that I have out now about 3 years ago, after some dabbling and some more hectic life journeying. And that's the journey in a nutshell. It's been a wild one.
Well, there's definitely a lot in that.
Yeah.
That's quite the journey.
Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself accidentally slipping fantasy elements into your business writing? Just
funny enough, I think it's the reverse for me. I think because when I got out of university and then went to a writing program briefly, they let me do a 2-year program in 1 year at one of the colleges here in Ottawa. And at the time, I was still really wrestling with, do I want to actually give this author thing a chance, or should I, be focusing more on something that'll make me a little more money in the short run, to get myself professionally off the ground. And I kind of end up doing both. So I joined a marketing agency at the same time as I was writing, my fiction in my free time. And I noticed the truncated, punchy style of copy editing and writing for businesses and marketing purposes. It was kind of bleeding into some of my fiction, which if you're writing epic fantasy, probably not the best fit. You want more of the poetic feel and more of the things I'd been exposed to when I was younger. So yeah, if I think that was my problem initially, was I had very choppy writing is how I would describe it. And I had to catch myself and realize, what am I doing? Why?
Yeah.
I knew I was doing it. I just
Yeah.
it took me a while to click that it had yeah.
At least you
become
weren't
such a
doing any.
habit.
At least you weren't doing any Victor Hugo rants.
Yeah. Well, I'm just kidding. No, none of those. Yeah. I feel like that's something I was very adamant about avoiding in my
Yeah.
fiction. I can't I've gotten in trouble for saying this, and I realize it's ironic coming from an ex-pastor, but I cannot stand preachy books. I
Yeah.
really don't like preachy books. I mean, just across the board, if it flows out of the story itself, more like a parable. Like if the lesson is there as I read, but it's clear,
Yeah.
if you're not beating me over the head with it, that's fine. But if you wrote your whole novel just to convert me to your political ideology, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what I signed up for when I
Yeah.
picked up this book about dragons. Like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
It just comes back to that thing. Write a good story. You know,
Yeah.
tell a
Yeah.
good story. Um, because I know way back when all the, and I'm sure you're aware of this, all the Christian movies, all the faith-based movies, and it's just like they start with the point they want to make across, and then they write around it.
Yep.
Instead of just
Yeah.
write a story. You know.
There are some lovely exceptions, but I mean, I'm
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
I saw so many. There was this huge stretch of
Yeah.
evangelical Christian movies that were
Yeah.
just so bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, and one of the I won't say which, I will not say which, but there was one that came out while I was a pastor, uh and the senior pastor decided to show that movie as an event
All right.
for the whole church. Several hundred people, like it was a relatively big church, and several hundred came out for just to just to watch this movie, and one, they split the movie in half so that we could take up an offering halfway through, which was just the worst thing I've ever seen. So as if it wasn't already bad enough, because this movie sucked.
Yeah.
And then we take up an offering, and I'm just so embarrassed. And then the movie ends, and it ends with basically one, the movie itself had kind of like a built-in, not an altar call, but basically a call to
Yeah.
action. I won't
Yeah.
say, but it basically called with go do this. If you're a true Christian, you should go do this right now. And then one of the other pastors did an actual altar call. Oh, like it was just the worst thing. Like, yeah.
I can see the
So I've
entire
definitely
room
seen the
backing,
lows.
seeing the room
Sorry?
backing away. You can definitely see the
Yeah.
room backing away, slowly backing away. Or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then like have you ever seen The Visitation?
No.
Oh. So I mean it depends how you feel about horror movies, but this was a Christian horror movie, and it
Wow.
was I say it competes with just I recommend this movie to horror fans that I know, regardless of their faith, because I mean it is just a straight up good movie. It has a strong Christian bent to it, but it doesn't punch you in the face. It's not a
Mm.
preachy movie by any stretch, and it will scare you. Like, it's just a very well done movie. You would
Yeah.
not expect it.
Cool.
Yeah. So
That was called The Visitation, was it?
yeah, yeah. I think it was written by, I think it was based on the book written by Frank Peretti, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I always mix him up with Ted Decker, who's another Christian horror author. But I
Because I'm
think
not
this one,
religious at all, but I'm a massive horror fan, so you would
mm,
definitely recommend it for someone like me.
yeah, I would go in braced, but I'm saying this like yeah, I can say it from having been on both sides, having seen it before and after Faith. Like it holds up as a really good movie.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll definitely
So
check it out.
yeah, like it's again, there aren't many, especially coming out of that period of evangelical Christian movies that I would recommend. But there are, and that's my point though, there are some. That's
Yeah.
one of them. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
yeah,
I'm open to all forms of horror, so
yeah.
I have no issue with the people that are getting murdered, whether they're Christian, whether they're whatever faith they may be, as long as they're getting murdered, and you know,
Yeah, I
I'm
promise you
definitely
some great murders, some great demon
right.
possession, and the rest I'll leave to you for
Yeah,
you to
because I
find.
watched we our last guest that we had on, he was a horror writer, so I kind of hijacked the podcast a little bit.
That's
We
awesome.
pretty Jamie was just sitting there going, "Yep, yep, yep." Um,
What
but
about doing?
me and my wife, we've because I've just been in hospital for about 10 months, so I'm now officially home. So there was a movie called Nosferatu that came out not long. Well, it's a remake of a remake. So that there
Yeah.
was it came out in the 1920s as a silent film, came out in the 60s, and then came out last year. And it wasn't in a lot of cinemas out here in Australia. Like the cinema we were going to that was close to the hospital that I was at, they had posters for it, but they never put it on. So I
Mm,
obtained it, and we've been putting off watching it. And then the author we interviewed last week said, "Oh no, you really need to watch it. You really need to watch it." So we sat down last night and watched it. And I have a rule about horror movies: it's not a true horror movie if it goes for longer than an hour and 35 minutes.
that's
But
fair.
Nosferatu went for 2 hours and 12 minutes. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'm willing to. It's got a good cast: Willem Dafoe,
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'm in. it was amazing, absolutely phenomenal. And I think technically you only see one person die on screen. Everything else is done off screen. And I
Wow.
don't normally don't like that because I'm more of a visual horror. I like to see the people dying. I know it makes me sound like I'm a serial killer, but I love good death scenes, like really good death scenes. That's why I like the
Mm,
Saw movies because they came up with unique ways to kill a person. But one person actually die on screen, and it was phenomenal. It was all about, the implied horror.
yeah.
You can come up with things in your own
Mind.
mind of how these things happened. You would just see the bodies, and they'd just be drained of blood. But obviously, this vampire Count Orlok was just grotesque, and yeah. Anyway, I won't talk about it too much, but it was definitely really good. So I will give the Visitation a go. I'm actually gonna, while we're talking, I'm gonna find it on my website.
Yeah. Well, you're the third or fourth person now to share or directly recommend Nosferatu. I really need to watch it.
Yeah,
I mean,
the new look. I haven't seen my wife had seen the one that came out in the 60s.
mm,
Um, Obviously, we haven't seen the one that came out in the 20s because that was silent film, and I don't believe you can get it anywhere. But even the 1960s Nosferatu movie is very hard to come by, even if
mm,
you try the illegal method. But yeah, the new one is readily available on. I think you can buy it on. You can rent it on Prime, or if you go to certain websites, you can get it for free.
yeah.
But yeah, I would highly recommend it after watching it last night. It's still fresh in my mind. Um, it's obviously set in the 1860s in Germany. So,
Mm,
I don't normally like period piece horror movies. I'm more of a, in the last 10 years, I want to see it happen. But it was even that didn't bother me. It was really well cast, really well written, and definitely I agree with our previous guest review of it. So yeah, check it out if you like horror movies, man. It's really, really good.
that's
And
good.
there was no
Okay. Yeah.
swearing or anything like that, which is very refreshing. I mean, I
Yeah.
swear a lot because, well, not a lot, but I used to swear a lot more. But there was no foul language. Um, I think there was one implied sex scene,
Mm,
but that was about it. And it was refreshing. It was really
yeah.
good. Like we both watched it all without looking at our phones, and 100% would recommend it. So definitely check it out.
That's good to hear. Yeah, horror books, I find hard to find ones that have that kind of that sounds
Yeah.
right up my alley. I do like a good period piece here and there, but really in horror I watch, I want the psychological, I want the implied
Yeah.
horror. I do like some good, intense. Well, I don't usually go for intense gore, but I do like a good. It depends on the type. Yeah, Saw wouldn't be as much up my alley, but a good monster flick.
Yeah.
I love really well done monster horror.
Yeah.
When you feel the pain of that monster catching someone,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that's the thing too. That to me, I actually love tying that into my fantasy. I love hints of dark horror in fantasy because then that makes the evil feel real. The sense of horror you have in the face of something truly menacing. I like when fantasy ties that in somehow. So it's something I go for. Not so much that you would ever think that my fantasy is horror, but I like that element. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. No, well, Martin Kern's one of our sponsors who we've had on the show many times. His fantasy is like it is definitely high fantasy, but it does
Mm,
have horror aspects to it. And so
Yeah.
he has written horror stuff before as well,
Yeah.
which I've read, which is phenomenal. And his books are great. Like he's able to do the fantasy genre with, I wouldn't say just a sprinkling of horror. Like there is a fair bit of horror in it, but it doesn't feel like it's just horror. It's like
yeah.
both, because I love fantasy and I love horror. You put them together, I'm set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
there's definitely is room for that kind of genre, I mean, it's not really set in stone at the moment, but fantasy slash horror, I think are some of the best stories that are told. So there's nothing wrong with that.
I'm biased, but yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
Well, let's lean back into the fantasy side. We are going to ask you the Amy Cormac question. It's a bit of an for our guests, our regular listeners. Sorry, we had a guest on once, and he started really talking about maps in books.
Hmm.
So he brought up the topic. Debates exploded. So now we have to ask you the Amy Cormac question, which is maps in books, yay or nay?
I mean, overall, I'd say yay, but I'm not. How do I put this? Um, so, for example, I mean, mine right now doesn't have one. I absolutely plan to do one. Um, I'm holding out. So, I mean, if I had a strong opinion about it, I try to give what assets I can to make the reading experience better, depending on different people's needs. So, like an
Hmm.
index and pronunciation guide, I had a partial one for the first book. I have a full one in the works right now, and I'm going to have that for future books. Just for those who want it. But it doesn't have to be, in the way. It's just there for those who need it. I see maps kind of the same way. Um, that said, I would never not read a book because it didn't have
Yeah.
one.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
I see people who have that attitude. I'm thinking, excuse me? Because sometimes I find it almost I can see the opposite side where I've had times where the map is almost uh, disruptive, where especially if the bad like some of these maps
Yeah.
look terribly cartoonish
Yeah.
and the proportions are terrible. And if you've described the world well, even if you haven't, my mind will
Mm.
fill in the blanks. I don't need that thing. But I
Yeah.
guess for those who do, it's great to have it.
Yeah.
That said, I have my eye on a design now. Now I haven't even asked her what her prices would be because I can imagine, I'm braced for a
Yeah.
hefty bill down the road. But I have my eye on a map designer who does kind of old school, like medieval style.
Yeah.
So like artistic, like
Yeah.
illustrations all along the outside, and the legend compass is all illustrated, right? So it bounces off the page. It looks like a scroll that you've opened from
Mm.
an ancient monastery. That I can absolutely go for. So that I'm saving up for that. When I do a map for my world, it's that or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely it's got to look good. It's got to look, good.
Well, I think sorry I missed the first half of the conversation. I had someone knock on the door, but
It's all
um
good.
I always see I've had best of both worlds. So I'm a fan of a fantasy writer called David Eddings. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he hasn't written like a whole lot, but he has this series called The Belgariad, which my grandmother got me into it. And it's absolutely amazing. But he had very simple maps. So while his 6-part story on the Belgariad took place all over his fictitious world, at the start of each book would sort of take place in one or two of those areas. He would just have a very simple map, just showing, okay, this is, this area, and these are the people that live there. Like these are the centaurs that live here, or the elves, or whatever that may be. Very, very simple. And, no legend like you were just talking about, in that scale. But then obviously I've read fantasy books that do go into that much detail, and they do have, it's a multi-page spread on, the whole world and the legend and, who lives where and everything like that. I actually prefer the simpler stuff, because I think we've had this conversation before, but I am not a fan of the huge maps because I feel like it takes too much away from the story that you keep having to flick back and going, okay, this is where we are. With the simple map, I can go, okay, I understand that. And then when I'm reading the story, I can remember the details on the map. You know what I mean? Rather than having that long, huge map to have to keep going back to.
I would never want my map to be complicated. I would just want
Yeah.
here are the nations, here are some of the main cities. That's it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want it visually to have that appeal. Because here's the thing that does get me, and I get is completely subjective. My mind goes nuts at an incomplete map.
Mm.
So that actually is what bugs. So I think, yeah, let me see. I want to say, uh, I have one of the Aragon books here. and this is my classic go-to example. Now, the illustrations itself, they're not bad. It's like, again, cartoony feel, but it only. I mean, I realize we're audio, but
No, we'll be
the
on
map
video as
itself.
well. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. On YouTube as well. Yeah. So exactly, like it's hard to show, but the map cuts off.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and beyond it is supposed to be these unknown lands that the spoiler alert, the series ends with them, pending the newest book that I haven't read, but the series ends with, some of the main characters going off to these unknown lands. And my mind just goes nuts at that because it's not like it's across an ocean. That would be one thing if you're like, oh, we're going on a voyage into the unknown. That's fine. No, this is you've just cut off half the continent at the end of the page.
Yeah.
That kills my soul. I realize that's probably just me. A lot of people wouldn't be as bugged by that.
Yeah.
That's part of why I'm waiting because in my
Yeah.
story I've only written the first book you get about a third of the continent
Yeah.
that we're on. So now by the end of the second book, you've gone to most of the rest, and I've mentioned enough of the rest. Now I'm like, now it's time to do the map,
Yeah.
give you the full thing. And now that I've one, explored it a little more in my own mind and in my notes, and two, now that you at least know what I'm referencing,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to do just a half or a third continent map. Just
Yeah.
that would irk me, so I'm not going to do it to my
Yeah.
readers, even if most would want it anyway.
Yeah. How would you feel about like the whole video game style where it's like clouded? It's like where you're here
Mm.
now, but you don't know what's here, and it's all cloud, and the characters have to move for it to open up. Like, would that irk you as just as much?
I hate that in video games too. I love the discovery. We see,
Yeah.
no, I like the middle ground
Yeah.
of, for example, Skyrim,
Yeah.
right? You're playing through Skyrim, you see the whole map. Obviously, there they've excluded most, but you see the map of Skyrim where you are.
Yeah.
I don't need the rest of the continent for that game, right? And you see the capitals of each hold, but you don't see all the places until you discover them. That's
Yeah.
fine,
That's
you
fine.
know?
Okay. Yeah.
Like a partial map.
Yeah.
But if it just looks like you haven't completed it yet,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it's just me, but
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, that's just something
Yeah.
I'm not able to
Yeah.
stand.
And I always feel like maps should be in the back of the book, like
Yes.
so
Yeah,
it won't ruin the story. Like, if you want to, you can go to the back and have a look, but if it's there in your face, you're kind of introduced with, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing, this is, you're just like,
well, yeah,
Or I would prefer having, like remember when the old music magazines used to get posters to pull out? I would prefer the map to be like tucked into the in sleeve so you can pull it out and you can have it
okay,
in front of you while you're reading it. So you can go, oh yeah, okay, without having to go flip, 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 flip,
yeah,
right, flip, and then all the, because I am that kind of person. I want to associate with the map. But if you have a pull-out one and you're reading at a table or on the couch or something, just have it in front of you and go, oh yeah, okay, that's where we're at.
yeah. Like to me, like at the end of the day, none of these are issues that are I'll die on this hill kind of
yeah,
issues. And every I treat right now, I treet writing as I add what I can when I can and just
yeah,
slowly improve what comes out the other end, both in terms of the writing
yeah,
itself, but in terms of what I can add, uh, you know, internal art. I added some for the illustrated, version of the book. I'm at trying to add more formatting stuff like icons and
yeah,
section break, fancy looking section breaks, things like that. Just anything I can do to up the quality, you know. But yeah, like I don't know. I envy those who can do everything all at once on their
yeah,
first try,
yeah,
To me, it's a matter of budget and
yeah,
a matter of just learning as you go.
yeah.
I've treated this as something I'm not going to know everything right away. I'll keep learning, I'll keep improving what comes out the other end.
So do you use maps at all to build your worlds, or do you kind of just like build the world around your story kind of thing?
Yes and no, both. Where, I very much in my mind had the map mostly laid out as I started, but just knowing how I write,
Yeah,
some of that has changed for sure. I've
yeah,
added little regions as I've gone,
yeah,
or I'm definitely like I'm not a hardcore outliner or pantser. I'm kind of
yeah,
somewhere in
in the middle.
between when I write.
Yeah, that's like me. I plot. I like to plot out events and then pants in between.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and like even like I've almost finished the draft of my next book, and I just found myself in the middle, just suddenly creating all these new characters that like fit the story.
Mm.
And I'm just saying,
Yeah, yeah.
wow, okay. I have to go take some notes of all this backstory stuff because I do not want plot holes in my story, But
Yep.
yeah,
I get to have fun with that in my case because with the current length, well, like I said, my current book was initially published as two separate
yeah,
parts with a third part coming, and I just ended up combining them all into one,
yeah,
expanding the first two, writing the third, combining them. So the book is still inside, divided into three parts,
yeah,
which is kind of nice because then I can introduce each with a nice piece of art that I got done. But the second thing is that it gives me some freedom for things like that. So, for example, in the current book, the prologue to part two is really just, another chapter fit in there that introduces a new character I wanted to introduce. Right. And when I came up with that character, I then had to do exactly that. All the research, all the thinking, all the mapping out, the outline, fitting this new
yeah,
character and three or four other characters and a whole other story arc into my current outline. But at least like I found that break between parts was the perfect time to slip it in. So I've
mm,
actually done that in the sequel already, where I finished part one out of three for the sequel, and I immediately had this. To me, they're already one of my favorite characters I've introduced to the series. I had this idea turned into a whole new sub nation I've introduced with
mm,
their own culture, Celtic lore and history tied in, and I'm having a lot of
yeah,
fun with it. And then branch that in, and it fit nice and easy into that divide between parts. A nice breather,
yeah.
stepping away from the story, getting some exposure to something new, and then immediately tying it into the main, story arc. So
Mm.
it's fun. I like those chances to step away from. It's a nice just creatively, if you get too locked into the current arc you're working on,
Yeah.
it can feel stale even as a writer. And if it feels stale as a writer, it definitely will feel that way to the reader.
Yeah, cool. So why don't you tell us about the Fall of Selvandrea? Like,
Uh,
what's it about? Introduce us to this world.
Yeah, I mean, so I've kind of hinted it has elements of horror, so I would call it dark fantasy. It's dark flintlock fantasy, so it's set in early modern era
Oh, cool.
technology, fantasy world. So lots of ships and cannons and muskets, and I kind of think of it as borderline Les Mis, Count of Monte Cristo era. So you can see some of the
Awesome.
inspiration tying in there. But definitely not the same world, obviously, and
Yeah,
and culturally a lot of different stuff going on. Some medieval crossover, but also some sci-fi. So there I had a little fun. I have no shame blending
yeah,
genres. And to me that's part of Key to the World because it's very much the sci-fi backdrop in part has to do with the main force of evil in the world, which is kind of I don't want to call it a virus. It's more of an organism, a bacteria
yeah,
that can assemble itself and becomes more intelligent as it becomes almost a hive, and to protect itself, it creates and releases monsters, and it infects people, so it possesses them. So you have this very pervasive, very overwhelming, but very unknowable force of evil that has this explanation behind it, but in an age where the technology is only just starting to be able to keep up with it, right? And in the midst of that, the characters, caught up in the chaos, caught up in not knowing who to trust. Um, you have cults vying for power, using the possession as a source of power. You have nations trying to earn their place amidst the wars and chaos, and then you have some very fun different assembly of characters that sort of band together from some of these different nations. One of whom who I won't give too much spoiler. I go for a very mysterious feel for who I would call the main character, mostly because he starts off very mediocre is the word I would go for. Kind
mm,
of a very I was going for washed up, kind of middle aged, washed up. And just not knowing where he stands in the world, caught up in the war that his nation has been a part of, and then he immediately goes from that to uh, a face first head on encounter with this evil. And how that transforms him sets the stage for the rest of the story. Yeah, and I think
cool.
that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I've just got a bit of an announcement. This is huge for Ryan. I just went on Amazon and bought a copy right now. I just did a Ryan. Ryan is usually the one that does this. Like he's just like, ah, damn it, but you sold me that book, like, and he buys them online. I just did that then. It's dude, it sounds so good, and I'm not just blowing smoke up your, it's
I'm
just
happy to hear that. I hope
yeah,
you love it. Yeah,
yeah,
I think safe to say if you read the prologue in chapter
yeah,
one, you'll get a good sense for what to expect
yeah.
right away.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
Look, I'm a slow reader. I probably read one book a year just because
fair.
the way my mind works is I'll start reading and then I'll have an idea will pop into my head and then
Yeah.
it wanders off and I got to take notes and write things down and then I got to go back to the book and so
My reading has slowed down considerably since I became an
yeah,
author.
I know. And
It's
it's
a
a shame
curse for sure.
because look in the first and yeah, in the first 27 years of my life, I only ever read two books, you know.
Wow.
And then I slowly read more. I got into
That's all. I
history and
mean,
then
yeah,
yeah,
it's like one of my friends, Matt Sorensen, who has the YouTube channel Beard of Darkness.
yeah, yeah,
He says the same thing. He started very late in life reading,
yeah,
and I like, yeah, it's funny. Like I said, I started young, but then I had a big gap that felt like
yeah,
I barely read anything,
yeah,
When I came back, I read with a vengeance. I went from having not read, I think, a
yeah,
single fiction book in
yeah,
2 to 3 years to reading the entire Wheel of Time series in
yeah,
about 6 months,
yeah,
which is nuts
yeah,
when you consider the size of
yeah.
those
I mean,
chonkers.
I got through school without reading an entire book. Like
No, I believe it. Yeah.
I had a habit of being able to just go up to the people that were smart and book readers and act like I'm testing them and be like,
That's funny.
tell me all about this. And they go, oh well, and I go, haha. Like I went into a history exam once where the teacher said, you have to read up on these three events, three topics, and then we're not going to tell you which one is in the exam. And then 10 minutes before we went in, I walked up to one of the smart kids and went, "Tell me all about this event." And I only chose one event, and then I went in there, and it was that one.
That's so funny. That's so good. Yeah.
That's what
I
I
had a
did.
friend in high school who was very much like that, and
Mm.
he would come to me. It was very entertaining. We still get along to this day. If anything, he sometimes will say, "Hey, we should go out for a drink. You're the guy who got me through chemistry and got me through
Yeah,
history." And it just cracks me up every
yeah,
time. But
yeah,
I mean, that's just efficiency. I don't
yeah.
know. That's just
I was,
that's
I, I was just,
intelligence right
I
there.
was, yeah, but it was weird because I was good at figuring out patterns. Like I figured out the multiple
Mm.
choice pattern in our school. Um,
Fair. Yeah.
like to about 75% accurate. I beat the smartest kid in the school in the state math competition,
That's
and
wild.
it took me 20 minutes.
Wow.
It took him an hour and a half, and it was just like I was like,
That's
"Bup, bup, bup,
wild.
bup, 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 bup," and it was like I got 94%.
That's freaking wild.
I'm just like that's who I was back then, and so like eventually like I think I was 12 when I read Jurassic Park. Um, I think I'd seen the movie, and my mum's like, "You need to read a book." We
So
need
you
you
read
to
Jurassic
read. And I'm
Park.
going like, and so she got me Jurassic Park. I'm going, this isn't a kid's book. Like if you've read it, it's not a kid's book. But I was just
That's
like,
awesome
this
though.
is
I mean,
awesome. But
yeah.
I had it helped me because I had the visuals from the movie in my head, just reading this thing.
Yeah.
And then it got to, Dennis Nedry getting eaten alive in the car. And I'm going like, well, they didn't tell you what happened in the movie, but you know,
Yep.
you know, that was Jurassic Park and The Lost World were the only two books I read in the first 27 years of my life.
That's wild. I
Yeah.
mean, hey, that's a great I love Michael Crichton. Crichton? I always want to say
Yeah.
Crichton, but it's Crichton, right? Yeah.
Crichton. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, just fantastic. My latest, it's been a while since I've read a good Crichton book, but the latest was I finally got around to reading The Andromeda Strain.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I read it was a different author who wrote the sequel, I think using some notes from him and then branching off. Uh, and that was pretty good too. I always forget the name, but well, the book was The Andromeda Evolution, I think.
Yeah.
Not a strong name as Strain, but the book itself was a fun thriller, techno thriller follow-up to the Strain for sure, or yeah, to Andromeda
Yeah.
Strain for sure.
Yeah. No, the
Yeah.
Jurassic Park book they got me was like a two booker. It was like
Okay.
Jurassic Park and Congo. I've never read Congo, but it's in there. It's in the
Yeah.
back of the book. The it's always weird when they do that when they put two books into one book. Um,
I heard the movie sucked, so I've never gotten around to watching it or reading
it
it.
probably did. Like I think his two biggest things are Jurassic Park and Westworld.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, they're both very, very similar. They're both the same thing, but with different. You know,
It's true. It
one
is
with
very
robots, one
true.
with dinosaurs.
Yeah. And that is something I've heard about just most of that fiction in
Yeah,
general. It follows kind of that same arc of
yeah,
technology. Oh no,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, well, I think he was ahead of his time in his writing. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, absolutely.
like,
He nailed that the eeriness isn't the right word. There was a just the tension carried on throughout around very intellectual is maybe too strong word, but no, they're very thought-provoking
yeah,
intellectual themes, but it brought it down to earth and it gave it tension and
yeah,
pulled you along with it, in a way that everyone can enjoy. Yeah,
yeah. No, I would
yeah,
have loved to be in his head as he was writing Jurassic Park. Just
true.
it's just like because the amount of research he'd have to do and the
Yeah,
um, oh, it would have just been amazing, honestly.
yeah,
Give
definitely.
me 5 minutes in a room with Michael Crichton.
Yep, yep. Author dream right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't want to hijack this episode, Ryan. Do you want to do some talking?
No, no, that's okay. There's a
We can get
question
back
that
to
I generally
horror.
ask most of the authors. I've been on Amazon and had a look at your the book on Amazon. Okay, you can buy it in paperback or Kindle. What I like to
Done.
know in relation to the cover, did you design that yourself, or is that someone that you contracted out to do the artwork?
Yeah, so the illustration is by an artist named Joe Urquiza. Very talented guy. Yeah, so I mean, when I decided to republish, the three smaller books as a single volume, which the story tells much better that way. So I'm very glad I made that decision. But immediately I thought, okay, I need to up the ante. I want, I have time. I want to do this right. And
Yeah.
one of the things I realized is I want to give this, a proper cover.
Yeah.
So I used the same designer that I had for my initial versions, but I searched around for illustrators, different prices, different time ranges. I talked to one illustrator, but it was going to be roughly a year and a half wait, and it sounded like that was the minimum, and the price was very, very hefty. And the more I looked at other art, I thought, oh, okay, I'm not sure that's for me. I'm not sure it's a good fit, even if I had that money and that time. I finished the book well within that time and the editing and had it ready to go, and I was going to have to wait. It sounded like another year and a half, really.
Mm.
So at that point I thought, okay, let's just see. And at the same time, while I was waiting, I had commissioned some internal pieces because I found this artist who did these incredible internal black and white pieces, and they blew me away. So, and this artist, like I can probably show. Yeah, here we go. Just to give some perspective, I feature them on social media whenever I can. But for example,
Oh
that piece
wow.
right there. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's the opening illustration for the book. And it's just that, and the turnaround was something like a week and a half for the first version,
Oh
and
yeah.
revisions within another week.
Yeah.
And the price was exceptionally fair. And then he did another one for me and another. So by the time I was really wrestling with what to do for the main cover, I thought, why am I not just asking this guy? Because I checked out some of his color, illustrations around that time, and they were equally mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay, Joe, just feeling it out. I realize your schedule is probably really packed, and I can only imagine the price, but just I'm braced, I'm ready. Just let me know, when would you be able to fit me in if you were able to, and what would the price be like for a full back and front
Yeah.
color illustrate? And he said, oh, I can do that next month, and here's the price. And it was like less than half
One
of what the
million
guy was.
dollars.
Yeah, he could have honestly gone way up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was blown away, and I thought, oh, you're
Yeah.
my guy.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
to me, it was
I
a
think
no-brainer.
most artists, like if you're going to be doing regular work with them, they'd
Yeah,
give you a discount, like, at least, like,
yeah.
not just bombard you. Like I'm working with an artist right now. I used to redesigning my last book. But he's very slow. He's doing multiple things at once. I kind of have to remind him every now and again, you know,
Mm,
hey buddy, what's the update? You know,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he's doing phenomenal work. He's a brilliant artist.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's the thing. When you're commissioning, there's always that. that's the up and down of
Yeah,
what we do. The moment you put something out of your hands, it can
yeah,
get very stressful when you have
yeah,
to say, "Hey, how are things going?"
yeah,
But on the flip side, the end results can be very fun,
yeah,
like this.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm very controlling with what I do.
yeah.
And the thing I find really difficult is the whole patience thing. Like, so like your book's done, you just want to get it out there, but the way to do it is to, set a date in the future, and I'm going, but I want it
Yeah,
now. You know,
yeah.
that
Oh,
sort
I
of
get
thing.
it. I very much get
Yeah.
it.
So
It's both with you. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, so I'm doing multiple projects around my new book. I'm working on a
Mhm.
short film as well,
Oh,
to
fun.
kind of
Yeah.
go introduce the world. If anyone wants to make a movie, they can go, this is the feel I'm going for. Um,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm kind of focusing on. I've I'm in the last chapter of the first draft.
Nice.
So it's nearly done. Um, and then I'll probably touch on the movie for a little bit while I figure out the cover, because the cover's going to take a while.
Have you started on or are you thinking about doing an audiobook?
Um, it would be tricky,
Mm,
because I mean, it's possible because my the main character is a female, and my niece is playing the role in the short film, and
okay.
she did the voiceover for the book trailer that just dropped. So I'd have to, if I did it, I'd want her to do it, and time is kind of
Fair. Yeah. Oh,
the
it's not a small project. I
no,
just no, I had no intention of publishing it because,
yeah,
I heard my own voice and even recording with editing with a proper
yeah,
mic. Uh, but I tested on two-thirds of the book. I made it through
yeah,
two-thirds, parts
yeah,
one and two, and I thought, okay, I know the skills. I've figured out the systems. I practiced. I made sure they were edited. I made sure they were admissible to Amazon's ACX,
yeah,
and but I realized, okay, yeah, no, 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 hell no. But
yeah,
at
yeah,
least I went through the
yeah,
process to know more about
yeah,
it. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, and I mean, there are a good number of POVs in the book,
yeah,
including several from female
yeah,
characters, and I don't mind if the main character is female, then
yeah,
yeah, you need a female
yeah.
narrator
Because
for the majority.
I can talk with a very nice voice, but I don't think the listeners would like it. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, if
I
it's too
think
much of that. Mm-mm.
if I did do an audiobook, I'd want to do it on my first book, which was Letters from the Emu War, which is based on a true event in Australian history. We did declare
Mm.
war on emus and lost. Hilarious. But it's all letters and journal entries, so that'd be really cool. I'd need probably about 8 different um actors for it, or voices for it.
Fair.
A few women, but I think that'd be a lot easier and a lot more fun to do because you're just reading out a letter.
Yeah.
But
My current thing right now. So in the end, I ended up just going through ACX and
yeah.
taking their royalty share option. So the narrator is working on the Fall of Selvandrea right now.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, so that is slotted to come out. I mean, it's the draft. I mean, we're aiming to be done by the end of April. So roughly, yeah, April 27th,
Now, is he
with any
British?
luck.
It's fantasy,
No,
so is he British? It's
I
just
thought of
like
that. He does have a very nice voice, though.
yeah,
I've been nothing but impressed. A
yeah,
very good fit.
yeah.
Yeah, nothing like mine.
Not
I
like
can
not
say
like
that.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Because he
I love
reads
Andy Serkis, but
yeah
that feels
he
weird to me.
because he reads the Lord of the Rings audiobook.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's just like, oh, this is so cool. I love Andy Serkis. He's just
He's a
brilliant.
gem. I mean,
He
what a yeah
and
legend.
they should be doing flipping, Oscar awards for motion cap work and all that,
It's true.
because
Absolutely.
his work
Oh,
is
he's earned it. He's earned
phenomenal.
it so many times over at this point.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
even flipping Planet of the Apes.
Yep. Yeah. See, like Caesar in Planet of the Apes, absolutely incredible.
I remember watching that second one in the movie theater, and I was just mind blown. My brother-in-law
Yeah.
refuses to watch it because he's terrified of monkeys. You know,
Wow.
and like you should
That's
laugh.
funny.
You should laugh at a monkey on horseback with a machine gun. But no, I'm sitting there crapping my pants. I'm going, because if you saw it in the wild, you'd
Terrifying. Oh yeah, absolutely.
be out of your flipping mind. There's a video going around I think it's at least 10, 15 years old of these guys in Africa, like these like the gorilla, not the monkeys, but the gorilla soldiers,
Yeah.
and they give a loaded machine gun to a monkey, and they're laughing and they're laughing and they're laughing, and then but
Yep.
like it's shooting at their feet, and they're just running and hiding. I'm going like that's exactly what it'd be, you know?
Yep. Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely terrifying. And I mean, the thing that Planet of the Apes gets right is just they're so versatile. What
Yeah,
I love in the first one when they're climbing the trees,
yeah,
and fanning out, versatility and
yeah,
flexibility we just don't have. Combined with intelligence,
yeah.
we'd we'd be screwed.
Yeah, it's definitely I just love the whole like there's an element of fantasy to it as well as science fiction,
Yeah,
and I love that combination of sci-fi fantasy. Um
yeah,
it's kind
exactly.
kind of what my new one is like sci-fi fantasy paranormal. It's got everything. And I love mixing genres.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just fun.
I'm a big fan whenever I come across it. So I knew when I started writing, that's what I had to do for sure.
Yeah. So what are some of the fantasy tropes that you just don't like? Or you try to avoid? Is there like things that annoy you
Hmm.
apart from
That's a
unfinished
tough
maps?
one. Other than maps, I haven't treated any of them as really off, or out of bounds.
Yeah,
Um, I try to avoid anything super cliche.
yeah,
I also don't mind throwing some things on their head, but when you do that, there's always 10 people ahead of you who've done it too. So it's tough. I mean, an easy example would be in mine. Someone made a comment who was reading my story and I agreed with them. And then they saw where it went. They were like, oh, never mind. Okay. It was funny to me. But one of the main characters who you see chapter 2, you see her character, and there's nothing more fun than writing from her POV.
yeah,
She's this little 8-year-old, 9-year-old, excitable little girl. Uh, just pick ADHD, running wild, just no filter, and facing this very dark world without a care in the world, and it's not just comic relief, it's also the fact that she's just insanely powerful and
yeah,
unpredictable. And funny enough, there was a hint of horror inspiration there too, even though she's not. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but
yeah,
some fun going on there too. And it's part of what makes her so powerful. But uh, you know, you, a trope that you see a lot of is the young character introduced early is some lost heir to a throne and destined
yeah,
for glory and part of all the prophecies in the world. And I mean, the thing is, I'll never get tired of that trope, to be
yeah,
honest. That's whenever I hear tropes, I just imagine they've been done
yeah,
badly because
yeah.
to me there's always the exception where I'm like, no, there's a reason that is a trope. It's
It's
worked.
good. Yeah, like Hero's Journey.
Yeah, like so with this character as example, it's like, well, I even flat out say at one point in the book, I'm like, she'll never sit on a throne. That gets said, just so you know, and it is 100%. I'm committing to that.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, not gonna happen. That doesn't make sense for this world anyway.
yeah,
It's because this one reader was like, oh, and I was like, just shut up and read.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it's tough. It's you want to, and you don't want to. I've read some books where it's so clear they're trying to stay away from the tropes, or they'll even
Yeah,
reverse the trope in order to be unpredictable. And after about 10 pages, it makes their writing very predictable,
yeah,
If you try to be too edgy, you actually
yeah,
stop being edgy in a
yeah,
way.
yeah. You have to give the audience what they want at some point. You
Yeah,
know. You know.
I think you do.
Are
It
you
doesn't mean you have
listening,
to
Disney?
compromise your
Disney?
story.
Disney, are you
Yeah.
listening? No.
So true.
I know. I know. I'm
Yeah.
refraining from talking about Star Wars, but
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, but whatever. We don't have to.
we bring it up too much. We bring it up too much.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Although Disney have got it right with the new Daredevil series, Born Again. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and it
Okay.
is beautiful.
I've
Absolutely.
heard I've heard good things. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's actually got me at the end of every episode wanting the next one immediately.
yeah.
So that's how I know
Nice.
it's good.
Fair. Yeah. Have you watched the Wheel of Time series at all?
I watched season one.
Okay.
I liked it, but like for me, I never read the books.
Uh
Um, I really loved the opening, like that opening first episode got me
yeah.
hooked.
Yep.
But we have a friend who's just like It got to the end of season one, he's just like, this is crap, and, what do you call it? Victor Hugo type rant,
Yeah.
and just
Like that's
obviously
the,
went, yeah,
I can very having read the books before the series, like I think just a year before the
yeah,
series, the first season came out. Yeah, that last episode was a doozy, and I can understand why it turned so many away from the series,
yeah,
having read the books. And the thing, I think even giving the writers grace, because the grace that they ask for is Matt Cawthon's character left,
yeah,
and they had to rewrite those last two episodes. I thought episode seven, even though they had to rewrite it, was incredible. So
mm,
the second last episode of that first season, to me, when like the revelation of which character is the
yeah,
dragon, they nailed that, I thought. Including the scene of that character's mother at the very beginning
hmm,
fighting on the mountain. Anyways, just they nailed some things for sure. Other things were kind of eh. And
yeah,
then that last episode, I think even giving them some grace for an actor leaving, they just went so far, far off script that it
yeah,
just now that said, I will say this. I thought they did a really good job uh taking that somewhere well in
yeah,
season two. So to me it didn't justify the creative decision, but they rolled with it in a way that did impress me,
yeah,
and I think at this point they're back. At this point it feels like the books that I read. Some people
yeah,
disagree with me that
yeah,
disagree adamantly, but
yeah. Well,
yeah.
if an actor's going to leave, you've got two options. You could just write the character out, or you can recast them. And I don't think recasting works all that well too much. It does in sitcoms, and stuff like that. But because they can joke about it, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's really
on short
tough.
notice, yeah, it would have been
Yeah,
tough to fit him into that. That said,
yeah,
the one they recast for the next two seasons, he's really good.
yeah,
I will actually say that's the thing. Most recastings I've ever seen in any show or movie, usually it's a flop.
yeah,
This he's so good. I love
it's good.
both of them almost equally.
Yeah,
That's hard to find.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard season three is doing really well. Like it's got a really good score on Rotten
It-
Tomatoes and all that.
yeah, well, yeah, I think it's the highest so far. At least on the critics side, which I don't always
Yeah,
trust, but
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
yeah, minus one big change they made, which everyone is kind of a little upset about. And I'm kind of like,
yeah,
they only did it for 5 minutes. Hopefully they'll move on. And
yeah,
other than one stupid change they made, I'm very optimistic. Yeah.
yeah. But the world does need more fantasy shows. You know,
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
good ones, well written ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And let's not talk about the other one.
yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, so it has something to do with Lord of the Rings, and we'll leave it at that.
No, I'd say rings, something to do with a ring.
Rings of Power. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no.
That
yes,
had the potential to be so good, but
Yeah,
it
that's
just
what's so
yeah.
that one
What?
upsets me. That really
Yeah,
upsets me. That's my don't mess with
yeah.
Lord of the Rings, you
When
know?
my first sign of it going to be horrid was when Peter Jackson offered to read the scripts and they didn't give him any.
Yeah, that should
You
tell you
know,
all you need to know, right?
yeah,
No input to
yeah,
the god.
yeah.
Like,
At least,
yeah,
at least we have the extended edition movies, um,
yeah,
because
yeah.
and you know what? That animated movie, The War of Rohirrim, or something that came out, that was actually pretty good.
Oh
That
yeah?
was Yeah, yeah. I watched that. I watched that on my computer while I was in hospital. It was actually pretty impressive.
Okay.
So that's also another good, and that's it's animated, so they had a
Yeah.
lot more room to do stuff with. But I really enjoyed that. So
I
that's
will
a
have to. I mean, I grew up with the animated Hobbit movie and the
all right,
old,
yeah,
old animated Lord of the Rings. I think it ended at around the end of the Two Towers,
oh
if
yeah,
I remember right. Yeah, I had both of those. So yeah, okay, that's good to hear. Because I've seen trailers for it. In the current state of anything Lord of the Rings, I thought, yeah, not giving it a chance. But from someone who's okay, I'll have to. I have a few things to add to my my
yeah. Long,
yeah, my
long
watch
list.
list now. Yep. It's a great problem to have.
Yeah. So if someone turned your book series into a film, do you have any fan casting that you've done? A director,
Oh,
maybe?
I've wrestled with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, make it easier. Anywhere, Bill and Ted are back. They can take you. They can nab you a director from time and a screenwriter from time. You know.
Well, in terms of someone to direct it, I mean, that's a little easier. I would definitely want it to have sort of that Lord of the Rings vibe.
Mm,
The thing I want more than anything else in a good fantasy show, frankly, just any, same thing with sci-fi, but, and frankly, movies, just in
yeah.
general, give me a good score. I need good,
Uh,
appropriate music, you know?
yeah.
Uh, to me, actually, Wheel of Time season one, what made it so good was the music, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Like that was phenomenal. And I think that that's the one thing they've kind of, season three, they're back to good. Season two, the story was much better written overall, but they
Mm,
actually dropped the ball on the music almost entirely. It sort of just disappeared.
yeah. They
And
lost the
the
budget.
other, well, the other case I saw of that was the Hobbit movies.
Mm,
The first Hobbit movie had great music, I thought. And then if you watch the other two, there's almost none by comparison.
mm.
And sorry, the end credits with Ed Sheeran do not count, if you've seen the
Oh,
stupid fire song at the end. I'm like, it's great, but it's not, like I want the music during the movie and I need it to be on par with Lord of the Rings. That was my
yeah.
only complaint about the Hobbit movie. Well, not my only complaint, but
Yeah.
it stood out to me. I
Yeah.
like, or Hans Zimmer, if you think of any good
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan movie, right? Like
Yeah.
that, I need that for my if I ever saw my books turned into a movie or a show, I need that.
You need Hans
Absolutely.
Zimmer. So you prefer Hans Zimmer over John Williams?
Ooh, oh, don't make me have to choose.
Impossible.
It's yeah, like and Howard Shore,
Hmm.
Hans Zimmer, and John Williams.
Yeah.
All three. Give me them all.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know who did the music for Back to the Future, but they went on to do the music for all the Avengers movies. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so he's a
I mean,
good,
very good too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but I don't know his name, so he's not that good, apparently.
Now you've challenged me. I need to look it up because actually,
Google it.
Endgame, in particular, the music
Yeah,
from Endgame gets stuck in my head a lot. I haven't watched it too many, but it's just one of those ones
yeah.
that sometimes comes back to me. I'm very curious. Yeah,
I'm Googling it right now. Alan Silvestri.
Alvin Silvestri. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Excellent, excellent scoring.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. And those two Avengers movies, in particular, Infinity Wars and
oh,
Endgame, that's just really good.
Infinity War is my favorite. It has to
Yeah,
be my favorite. Captain America
I
on the
agree.
on the platform. The music starts. I'm going. Oh, you know, just the entrances. And I'm one of those weird people that like an open ending. I remember being in the cinema and everyone going, "What? No!" And then it closes.
I was so happy. Yeah, I'm the same way. It's refreshing. It's
Yeah,
actually just refreshing to see that bold a choice made,
yeah,
and just to have to deal with that frustration for what,
yeah,
3 years after, I think,
yeah.
2 to 3 years,
No, I
something
think it
like
was
that.
pretty
No, it was a
close.
year. It
It
was
was one
exactly
year.
a year.
It was how long?
1 year.
Oh, it was just 1 year.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
One
think.
year, but I think
Yeah,
two movies in between, which isn't too bad.
yeah.
That's, yeah, 1 year is not bad.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, one of those movies in between was bad, but
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying the movie was fine. The wait was
yeah,
tolerable. Yeah.
yeah,
Which one
yeah.
was it? Marvel, right?
I think Captain Marvel.
The Captain Marvel. Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
the
yeah,
the what do they call it? The Mary Sue, the one
yeah,
that
yeah,
has no struggles to overcome. No, it's just I'm tough all the way through. You know,
yeah, yeah. A little
and
forced,
yeah,
and
and I'm
then of
just
course
like,
comes and saves the day at end
yeah.
game, but
I
they didn't
I
over.
I heard because they were forced to throw her into Endgame. Um, that Doctor Strange was going to bring down the ship instead of Captain Marvel.
Oh, don't tell me
Like
that.
that was what was going to happen, and they're like, okay, we'll put Captain Marvel in. Um, you know,
Oh, that would have been so much
and
better.
because she was so OP, overpowered, they were like, we're going to send her away now. It's just like,
Yep.
It's just like
Oh,
all the movies, their goal is to how can we, depower Thor because he's way
yeah.
too strong. It's always how can okay, we'll send him away.
Yep.
We'll make him overweight and depressed. It's just
Yeah.
always something to make him less powerful because he could just,
Well, I love an overpowered character done well, and you
yeah,
don't do them well by just finding a way to like rob their power or
yeah,
just put you give the like just a little creativity, and you can
yeah,
always find a real challenge, you
yeah,
know? And so that always that's
yeah,
something that bugs me in a lot of these
yeah.
superhero movies.
No, yeah. And
Yeah.
what did bug me as much as I loved Thor Ragnarok, it was all about you don't need a weapon, do you have your powers? And then eventually Infinity War
Yeah.
was like, I need a weapon.
Yeah, yes, I 100% agree. It completely turned the entire,
Yeah,
where was his incredible power enough to defeat his sister from
yeah,
Ragnarok when he
yeah,
needs a freaking axe to be,
yeah,
anyways, yeah, I agree.
yeah, yeah.
Totally.
But that's the problem of having so many different directors and so many different writers and so many and trying to
Yes.
tie it together. They did a great job because out of 22, 23 movies, I think two were bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they did a solid job and then they just went overboard and well, Deadpool said it best in Deadpool and Wolverine. We're over the multiverse. Stop. You
Yeah.
know?
Now that was a fun movie.
That was so I enjoyed that movie. That's the first movie in a very long time that I watched it 3 times at the cinema.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
it's
Yeah. I don't think not for that one, but I had the same reaction. Oh, what was it? It wasn't Top Gun Maverick, although I think I saw that maybe
that was
twice.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's the thing. There's been a few really good hitters lately. That one, that to me was the one that broke the what felt like a very long stretch of meh,
Yeah,
and then Top Gun Maverick hit and just blew me away.
yeah,
That was quality.
yeah. That I think for me it was that. It was what was it? What was it? What was it? No Way Home, Spider-Man No Way Home. Just bringing
Yes,
back the
yes,
original
absolutely.
cast
Yeah,
and just concreted my firm belief that Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man. Just
I agree.
just
I
like
absolutely agree.
and the cinema agreed because when he jumped on, they erupted.
Yeah.
Like the whole cinema erupted, woo cheering, and then Tobey Maguire comes on and everyone's like, eh.
Yeah.
It's just,
Love him,
I
but
love him,
you
but
know,
and I think just Andrew's the stronger actor out of all of them.
yeah.
And
I mean, oh, those his two movies where he nailed he had such a unique personality for Peter Parker.
yeah,
His accent was just amazing,
yeah,
It made you feel like, this is a
yeah,
real New York kid, dealing with
yeah,
this stuff.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I love those. And
I
and
yeah,
how I've never seen grief handled so well in so little time as
yeah,
they did at the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like
yeah,
just Aunt May's closing line, and it was just very
yeah.
well done.
It was so good.
Yeah,
He was robbed of a third one.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my only thing with it is because he was 27 when he played. You know,
yeah. I agree.
I wish they start. He's been Spider-Man for 10 years. You know,
Yeah,
they should have.
that'd be
That would have been
fun.
so fun. You know,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
just yeah. But it's ironic that the director was called Mark Webb. But but I loved his style. How he made it feel grounded. I love a grounded movie, and this is why I love the old Ninja Turtle movies, the puppet ones, because they're grounded.
Mm,
It's not this. Not like the Michael Bay ones that were just.
yeah.
You know,
Well, they were just essentially Transformers, but with turtles.
yeah.
It
And I
was
did.
Michael Bay being Michael Bay.
Yeah, I did get win tickets to the premiere in Sydney for that first movie. So I met Stephen,
Fun.
no, what's his name? Will Arnett, and I met Megan Fox.
Oh, that's fun.
Um,
Yeah,
um, but yeah, Will Arnett was the best. He's great.
fair. Yeah.
But yeah, cool.
Very
Anyway,
cool.
thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I realized we were
Um,
stretching out, but it was totally
why
awesome.
don't you plug yourself? Tell us where we can buy your books, your website, your social media, everything. Plug, plug, plug.
Yeah, well, easiest spot to find me around would just be on Twix, at Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So Tim McKay 52, same handle for Instagram. I believe same handle on Blue Sky. I'm there now, although I have to admit I'm not very active.
Mm.
And then yeah, and to buy my book, just find me on Amazon. It's under both Tim McKay or TJ McKay. It's nice and easy to find. Um, Yeah, so yeah, follow me on social media. I try to be pretty active on Twitter. It's kind of home base for me. Great writing community there to
definitely.
yeah. That's home. Otherwise, what's there to say? I do have a website in the works, so that is coming. I want to have my index on there. When I get that fancy map done, I want it on there. I'm hoping within the next year or two.
Cool.
Anyways, and then the audiobook will be on Amazon and Audible when that comes out. Again, hopefully that will be done by the end of April, and then probably releasing within a month of that. So pending any build up and pre-launch marketing I do for that, but that'll be here soon. I'm very excited.
Cool, fantastic. Guys, all Tim's info will be down in the show notes, so check that out. Check out our sponsors, Rebecca Cassells, Martin Kearns. If you want to reach out, thetrueandthefictional@gmail.com, and we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.
Cheers, everyone.